Welcome back to the Boundless Shores, except wait, it's a Paradise episode. Big twist for you there. Welcome to the Paradise Talk Show, where we just sit around and talk about D&D because we playing D&D this week. If you saw the last episode, you totally know what's going on.
Yeah, say
am
mushroom 18
making
times.
combat. I said, how many times? Holy shit.
It wasn't just you. I did everybody, and the collective amount of mushrooms that were said was 18, and fungi was said 5.
Well, look at us, 5 fun guys sitting around talking about D&D.
Oh, yeah.
What a segue. We're just gonna sit around talking about D&D and talk about the Boundless Shores. I don't know. Just kind of an open-ended discussion. Some of us, hopefully more than some of us, came prepared with a few questions. So, just to get our little brainstorm thunking.
This time I really only came up with one question.
I also came up with one question.
I didn't know that was our homework.
I came up with 5.
I came up with a couple. Well, I think of some on the spot as we go. You guys. I'm also just opening up my thing where I've also probably only written about 5 questions. So this may go a little bit faster than I thought.
Also realize that this pair of dice thing is just a pun on podcast.
Podcast, more like a
kinda.
Get it? Because video on demand.
Well, this is wrong, fellas. This one.
Everything is just wrong.
And we have no intention of correcting that in the future.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely true. Not.
Alrighty. Who wants to start? Just for fun, just to get our conversations.
I guess we could start with my question. What was the inspiration for your character?
What was the what was the inspiration of you making the DM character?
A shadowy figure that follows us around.
Well, I mean, I'll have to give this a thunk, but I can kind of give this a DM twist. Like, what was my inspiration for making the campaign or the world?
You could do
maybe certain cities
your
or
5e character quest.
Good.
Do Kuaku. No, I'll talk about the Boundless Shores. I'll talk about the more, inspiration-y side of being a DM. But I'll let you guys answer first because I need to do a thunk.
Okay. The inspiration behind Ionatan was that I have Irish heritage, as you guys all know. And the Irish have a very strong tie to the dryads of myth, obviously. And so I just found the druid class in 5e and 3.5, and I just thought, yeah, be kind of a cool character to run, just go back to my ancestral roots. And
Is
then,
that as a follow-up question? Is that where you got the name, like, or where you took inspiration and freed your name as
yeah,
Ionatan, kind of giving
yeah,
it like a kind of an Irish twist on Jonathan? Is that where that came from?
it's a twist on my actual name.
That's what I was figuring. Just adding IO to his surname or to his first name.
And then removing the
Or
hate.
is that what that is? Is it Yo Nathan or is it like Jonathan, but it's like Jonathan, like
So
with
just
just like a heavy Irish accent on it?
Jonathan, it's just basically
It's
Jonathan.
just Jonathan, but like adding
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
get it. Okay,
basically
okay.
add an
I
I
was
and
like,
an
is that
O, and then remove
Yo
the H.
Nathan or is that
And there you go.
yeah? Okay.
And there you go.
That's
That's
really cool. I actually didn't know that was your inspiration for your character. That's actually really neat. But it makes total sense with your name now that I think about it.
Mhm.
That is super awesome. Oh, Chris, I think this is your first Paradise episode.
Well, given that the last time that there was one, I don't think that you guys had even set foot aboard the Shadow Silhouette yet. So yes, this would be my first. Uh, as far as my character goes, Alistair, I based for the most part the thought of okay, I wanted to have someone that was going to be comfortable no matter the outcome of what he was doing. So I basically started mulling around the idea from an anime called Slayers, a particular Mazoku character, and well, the character in question is called Zelos, and he's basically just a really happy-go-lucky, priesty general kind of guy. And no matter what happens, he's always got one of those weird smiles on his face that lets you know that okay, there's more to the underlying here than what you think. And after that, I kind of slapped on the general archetype of the mad developer, so I kind of went back to memories of childhood and threw on just basically a thin veneer of crazy old Maurice from Belle or Beauty and the Beast, and otherwise I figured that I'd go for a general vocal intonation that I always pictured of just the ever confident and almost sleazy nature of Tim Curry's voice work. So add in a good amount of madness in there, and yeah, you basically got a pretty good compilation of what Alistair's whole deal is in one go.
That's really cool. I have a quick question for you, Alistair. Alistair. Because I do that all fucking time.
Do you want
Chris, I have a
Alistair's
question for
answer
you.
or
Did
Chris's
you?
answer?
No, I want Chris's answer. I just get names mixed up because my head's always in the game. Uh, did you have like a proto character? Like, were you solid on Artificer when you were developing your character, or like from my experience, like even creating Layla for the group, like um I kind of like was cycled through a few classes before I kind of officially landed on what she is. But did you have like other classes in mind? Did you have another character in mind before you settled on Alistair the Artificer?
I am always comfortable with full casters by nature, but I have a fair bit of experience for building out the weird and wacky magic items of prior D&D groups that I've been part of because they don't like to crunch all of those weird formulas in and remember that oh, since this spell only lasts inside of rounds, you need to multiply it times 4 for the additional costs for adding onto a continuous effect. I thrive in that kind of thing. So I mean, I remember that when we'd first met up, we met over at our place of employment at the time, and you were wearing a D&D shirt, and I casually mentioned that, Oh yes, I enjoy D&D as well, but I'm into some of the older stuff, 3.0 and 3.5 and Pathfinder and such. And that's when you seem to take particular note of my presence, and then we started chatting a little bit about what the
Well,
party could
when you
benefit from.
mentioned that you played like the older stuff, and I was like, "Oh, what do you play?" And you're like, and you said that, I went, "Oh my god, I'm playing a 3.5 campaign."
And I remember at the time going over with you saying, "Yeah, I could go for this kind of build," and you're like, well, I mean, we could go with that, but that would kind of be stepping on this person's toes. Okay, well, I know that I could build out this type of character. We've already got one of those covered. Well, why not an artificer? You, an artificer, really? Yeah, yeah, okay. And we just kind of went along with it.
Yeah,
I, I mean, I do remember
no, that's
that
awesome.
prior to
And also, just also like before Chris joined our campaign, he was actually the it's so fitting the mad architect of Seville.
yes, I
And so
recall having a lot of fun with
Owen
that.
can really thank his ass whooping to Chris for creating such a absolute beast of a character.
It wasn't even upgraded fully to what I could have done.
Oh no, I was like, I don't want to kill him, Chris.
Uh,
And he was like, okay, I'll nerf it, I'll nerf it. Oh, that's awesome. Owen, do you what was your inspiration for Golem?
Uh, I don't know. I just really like fighting characters. So a monk was kind of the next step, as I'd already played a barbarian, and as James was going a fighter, didn't seem right to go as a, a fighter. So
Okay, maybe class aside, what was your inspiration for building Orgolan's personality? Like his backstory, how he acts. I don't know. It was really fascinating. Like when you were developing your character, as I was reading it, that you had a really big emphasis on family in your backstory. Is that something you maybe took inspiration from real life with, or like how did you come up with Orgolan's personality?
that I wanted I wanted it to be different from all other um characters, that like the cliche of, oh, our parents died, and like, oh, our whole family's my whole family's dead, like, and I didn't want like that to my character to have that kind of cliche. So yeah, that's basically it.
Oh, that's actually really cool. And so when it came to developing your monks like a fighter, where did I know that the had to reveal that it does, I don't think it matters at this point. The tournament that you had in your backstory. Where did you where did you come up with that from being a monk, and rather than going for the more celibate um holy monk status? You went for more of like a fighting monk. Is that just your love of the martial class?
A little bit of the inspiration, but that was also, I did karate for over 10 years, and I never got to do any of the tournaments. So, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I kind of wanted him to do the tournaments just so I could say I did a tournament.
Fair enough. I like it. I think we've come full circle. Calduin, Leo, names. You know me. Um, what was your inspiration for coming up with your character? It's really cool that you like even in I like how I describe my world would be uh post-industrial fantasy almost with how many different like almost genres are clashing, yeah, throughout the world. You coming up with kind of a western vibe for your character is really interesting. What was your inspiration to that, and how did you come up with Caldu?
Um, well, at first was the inspiration was just reading through the one of the setting books that we have that's all about like desert wasteland kind of stuff. I forget what it's called.
Sandstorm?
Yes, Sandstorm. Thank you. Just reading through Sandstorm and then coming across the Asherati character and just as a concept itself was like, oh, this is actually kind of cool having a character who's just like really big on family and like swimming through the sands and living in the desert was really cool. And then from that, my mind went like, well, cowboys tend to have a more dusty, uh, deserty kind of land that they live in. Um, so it's like, why not make him a cowboy? And then with talking with you and creating more of the backstory and tying it into the events of what happened in the small one shot I did to set up your campaign, um, and adding that, making him lose his entire tribe and becoming a renegade in these lands is kind of what came up with the inspiration, and then pulling some stuff from like Egyptian culture and whatnot. Muted.
That is really cool, and I think similar to my question to Owen with his character that is so family centric. Is that something that you pulled from real life? Because I know that you have a big family. Is it something that you um, took inspiration with um, while developing your character?
It took a little bit of inspiration for that, but also took, like I said, from the Sandstorm books, where it says that Asherati characters are more like family community oriented kind of people. So that's why it's like now he's gone from the tribes of the Asherati to having this new family that he looks to and protect, and as we like to say, becoming the dad of the characters.
That's awesome. And I mean, I think that's a good segue into a question of my own that I have for you guys is do you see yourself in your own character?
Yes, I absolutely do.
I don't
In
see how,
I would
if
love
you're
to hear
playing a
your
character.
thoughts on like expanding on that. I mean, okay, so yeah, you're playing a character, and your character is obviously very different to your own, but do you see or do you use traits from your own self that you bring into your character in that way?
Yeah, so obviously introduced like the emotional vol we introduced Ionatan's emotional volatility and how that could affect his magic as he was younger, as well as in the campaign in present day. And um, in my younger days, I had a lot of trouble just regulating my emotions because I just didn't understand a whole lot about that because, you know, my autism. So yeah, I just I do see a lot of my younger days in Ionatan, as well as him trying to improve on that as well. It's a personal story for me that I've just put into this character, and I really try to pour all my heart and soul in a Ionatan.
Yeah. Chris, you've seemed to not really receive to this question. You don't see yourself in. Of course, you're playing the character, but like, do you think he's so different from the person that you are
I mean, when you
side of
start
the
taking
table?
when when you start taking on a character, it's inevitable that you're going to have some of your own reactions that are going to be the most immediate and visceral reactions to whatever you're currently dealing with. So it's kind of hard not to let a little bit of spillover of your own personality be the immediate knee jerk reaction. The real hard part is finding aspects of your character that you fundamentally disagree with and forcing yourself to take on that perspective, I've always found.
Hmm. I don't know. It's funny. I asked this question and I hear this take and I understand it, but it is really funny seeing how you react out of game, sharing your knowledge of 3.5 and all the different crazy builds that you know and the exploits that you have versus when you play Alistair in game with his exploits. I can kind of see the same excitement come through, which is the excitement to share and distribute knowledge.
Well, I mean, there was, for example, ways that I could have definitely made my character better for the equipment, gear, and stat layout and so forth. And I actively chose not to take on those aspects because I figured that that's getting all kinds of cheesy and such. But I have absolutely no qualm with going ahead and sharing that information with my party mates, especially because I often look at it as, okay, this is a chance for me to go ahead and spread some good news for as an old hand to some of the new guys about saying, hey, you know that thing that you really liked? Well, I have a way that I could go ahead and give that to you. That one thing that you really wanted. It's I am I often liken myself out of the game as the devil on any given player's shoulder, just going, "Hey, hey, here's something evil that you could pull off very easily," and leave it up to them and
Uh,
their own conscience to work out whether or not they actually want to implement it or not. For example, I remember that I was helping out
See, I
designing the
do
glass steel armor, and there was a lot of back and
I
forth that I
do
threw around with the party.
see you distributing your crazy knowledge and your exploits of 3.5, especially when I was listening to Nate earlier before we started recording, on his exploits and my thoughts on that. And it was really like listening to the apprentice that has learned from the master. And it is we are very appreciative of all your great knowledge, and I think you've really honestly helped these guys unlock another echelon of their character in their powerfulness and in their individuality. I'll say is like glass steel armor is very creative. You have you're crafting stuff for Liam that's matches his character, but really take him to the next level. And I think that's really cool, and it's opened my eyes it's funny. You look at the old Paradise episodes, and you'll see me say like, "Oh, I don't know what I'd do with a min maxer." Like, I think I'd lose my mind. But now, seeing someone who I wouldn't, I think I'm beyond the term min maxing. I'm just like, you're someone who just knows how to use the system to your advantage, which can just create these cool authentic individual moments and inspirations for each character, and I don't know, I just think it's cool. So you've opened my eyes to being to using some exploits, but I still think those exploiting spells to get a fortune is
I mean,
cheesy.
that's perfectly fair, and that's why I haven't been doing them on the regular, but I still like sprinkling all sorts of ridiculousness throughout. Recently, we had an example out of the game where I pulled up the topic of being able to basically terraform most of Vale Bridge over into a money-making and meat factory, just because of a combination of a couple of obscure spells that were only posted on their on the Wizards of the Coast website about like 2 decades ago. And while it was hilarious, I also commented right off the bat, I have made it an official rule. I am not allowed to implement this because even though I am a horrible min maxer and a horrible rules lawyer and all that, I at least still have restraint somewhere deep inside of me. I like to put it that way.
You have some remote level of integrity.
Integrity. Oh
And
no,
that
that's
makes
out the
me
window.
feel better, because if you destroyed my world, I would cry.
Rock's fall.
Does anyone else see yourself in your own character?
I definitely do. Especially when it comes to Calduin. I feel Calduin is just the strength that I wish I could feel at times. Because as you know, and those who don't, I'm basically stuck at home 24/7, not able to do much. And with having Calduin, I can experience some of the things that I just want to do and feel like I could be there to be the one helping people and supporting people instead of having to be the one that needs to be depended on.
Yeah. I like that. That's really sweet. And I think this question has come up, I think, quite often when we play, when we do um these Paradise episodes, but because we have a news person, we get to ask it again. And D&D is often a great escape where you can um put your mind into someone who's who may be braver, smarter, or you know more courageous than you. And I think D&D is a great escape. But why do you play D&D? What brings you to work this 3-hour game that we play every single week consistently? Like
Roughly,
what keeps
give
you
or
going?
take a couple minutes.
Give or take a couple minutes, give or take a couple weeks.
Hmm.
Uh, as
Cheaper
I've
than
My camera's
therapy, and I get to
frozen.
show off my library.
as I've probably mentioned before, D&D to me is my reset. When I play D&D, my mind resets. It's like, okay, everything's okay. There's nothing that we actually need to stress about. I find that there's times where if we skip sessions, I feel worse than when we had played.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's a wild Cali.
Hi, Callie.
Shock.
You go into Tunk. Their Shrek ears. We're wearing matching sweaters, hey? It's cute.
Yeah,
Nice.
I saw that.
Uh,
I doubt my girlfriend. Anyways, D&D. Where were we? Why do you play D&D? All right. Is that your legitimate answer there? Oh, I'm lagged again.
Yeah, you're
Still here?
We can hear
I'm still
you, but
here.
you're
Cool.
frozen.
like you're
I-
still
cool.
here. You're just frozen.
I mean,
Practicing screen
if I'm
faded to
being
black. Oh, we're back.
Oh
if I'm
boy.
being totally honest, I didn't even start with D&D as my role-playing game system that I initially learned off of.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. My first video game, or my first tabletop role-playing game system that I ever learned, and this will probably come as no surprise to those that have familiarity with it. Palladium Rifts. So if you aren't blowing open a hole inside of a tank, inside of a post-apocalyptic environment, using basically what you've jury-rigged together, you are not going to survive inside of that campaign setting. It's a post-apocalyptic nightmare where it's a post-apocalyptic really, where all sorts of holes have been ripped open in space-time. It's reawakened magic. Most of humanity's
Would you like to
died
run
out.
that for us at some point? That sounds like a lot of fun, and I want you to try and kill us. I think that would be hilarious. Is us
It,
just trying to survive?
I will gladly consider it. I'm not going to dump you guys straight into the environment of Rifts. Maybe a Beyond the Supernatural game is more the modern speed that we should consider, though. That's more of an X-Files current time frame, contemporary RPG system.
And I mean,
That
also talking about other systems. Sorry to interrupt you there, Chris. Talking about other systems. Halloween is coming up. I want to buy the Candelabra Obscura books and put together a Halloween adventure
Did you just say
using the
candelabra
Candelabra Obscura.
obscura?
spine tingling.
Candela Obscura. Thank you.
The
My bad.
candelabra goaded ship.
I love the Candelabra goated ship. Shoutouts, Paylor.
But yeah, like I said, I was playing inside of that environment, and yeah, it's a real cluster if you don't have the ability to cause ridiculous damage that'll cleave through 700 people in a single shot from your pistol. So,
So, I mean, talking about traveling all the way back to 1812 when you started playing TTRPGs. How did you get into them?
um, I actually was drawn into it from one of my friends back in middle school. It was circa 98, I want to say, and shortly thereafter,
So that was before the Great Depression, right?
yes,
Ah, okay.
1898. Yes, quite the memory
Yes.
then. Anyways, yeah, and after a while, I started playing around with the system and contorting it to my own ends, so that way I could turn it into a Gundam themed role playing game environment for the sake of my own entertainment. And my friends and I would
That's awesome.
gather up and play it on Friday nights inside of my basement. We'd run off to grab slushies, stop off at the Jumbo Video from the town that I was stuck in at the time, and we would basically game until around 3 a.m. And after a while, when you've been doing that for around 3 or 4 years straight, though, the burnout hit pretty hard. So I haven't been doing a whole lot of game mastering since back then. Uh, Having said that, once I moved to my current more locale, uh, I I ended up figuring that, well, so very few people are familiar with the Palladium system. I might as well familiarize myself with a more popular system, and 3.5 or 3.0 at the time was right there and an option. So I said, why not? And maybe I'll be able to convert some of these people over into adherents of the Palladium system. Uh, didn't work out nearly as well as I expected, but I mean, from there I developed in 3.0, 3.5, and Pathfinder 1. And yeah, I mean, sure, I've got all sorts of other games that I could probably throw together waiting in the wings, like, for example, something like Big Eyes, Small Mouth, or Stupor Heroes, which is a delightful, uh, like, beer and pretzel style, very casual role playing game system. I highly recommend anyone to look that one up as just a comedic side note. But yeah, I just find myself coming back to 3.5 time and time again.
That's awesome. Wow, we kind of got way off track there. I can't even remember the original question.
That's because of the years I was talking.
Yes, true. We traveled all the way back before, like pre-telephones and pre running water.
Prima donna.
This
Like
Paradise episode is
I'm
brought to
pretty
you
sure
by
that
Morse code.
Chris discovered fire and then started playing TTRPGs.
Hey,
Yeah,
we
exactly.
needed to develop a number generating system somehow, and we worked it out by seeing which sticks caught fire.
See, you know what? That's why he's a bald spot. That's what Pangea used to look like.
Hey, we needed maps. I was available, I was asleep at the time, they just started carving in.
Um, we were talking about like personal reason, like what's your reason for playing D&D and TTRPGs?
That's the one.
Uh,
Oh, sorry,
because
Chris. I love you.
because I need a hobby.
Yeah.
And that's probably more than true in all honesty, but I mean, it's I enjoy the strategy elements of it. I like the resource management. I like being able to pull out, hey, did you guys ever see this one particular issue of Dungeon Magazine? I think it was issue 3 or 126, where they gave a variant of a Githyanki crossbow that basically can be turned into a machine gun under these circumstances. I love that kind of thing, where you can just kind of pull something weird out and say, hey, with a couple of tweaks, something stupid comes out.
Awesome. I think Liam has answered. Chris has definitely answered. Owen or Nate, why do you guys play D&D?
I'm gonna say it's mostly just to play and also as a mental reset for a week of bullshit.
I mean, you also, Owen, you also got into playing D&D with kind of a weird journey.
Yeah,
With us meeting in Magic Club and then, trying out the D&D club after schools, and then a couple of people ruined that, so we're like, why don't we create our own? And then I introduced you to Liam, who introduced me into role-playing games, and that's we went from there.
think before
You were there. Were you there for Gwen's campaign?
I was there for a bit with Gwen's campaign. I wasn't there like for a long time. I was there for basically until the
What's
idiots
his name
run.
joined with all his. Yeah, what's
Yeah,
his name joined with his. So, Chris, the reason why we, for a while, just really didn't like people who exploited the game, because we had this one guy join into one of our campaigns that we played. And so he told us up front, we were probably level probably 6 or 8 at the time.
yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I have a total of 25 HP. And I'm like, that's a little weak. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I have a bunch of resistances that only the DM can know. And I'm not going to tell you guys what class I play or like any of my resistances. and I'm just like, and I have all these attacks that like I'm not gonna fully describe to you because only the DM gets to know those. And like
Yeah.
just like exploited the game. He had like a list of like 25 different like resistances and immunities, which is
Well,
that made it unfun for us. And we then avoided people who exploited the game, and we had the hate for that until you kind of changed your minds.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I just finished designing a new NPC for you that you've got sitting inside of the background. And, I mean, you saw the way that my mind unfurled for that. But,
Oh yeah, no, Ego's gonna be terrifying. Holy shit, that build is awful. It's terrifying.
I'm glad you approved.
It makes me so excited.
I just like seeing these things come to life, and if it's being used in order to turn me into a fine pasty smear, at least I know that I followed to the letter Ghoul's Guide to Taking the Party Down with You, an old document that is essential knowledge for any tabletop role player.
That was the issue of the newspaper after they declared that World War II was over, by the way.
Yeah.
World War One.
Oh, right. Sorry. Thank you. That's a funny ass gimmick.
I know.
Uh,
Everyone hears World War and two just flows out so smoothly afterwards, but there is definitely a World War One that came before it.
True. Hey, why do you play Dungeons and Dragons?
Um, I play Dungeons and Dragons just for the somewhat just for some feeling of stability. Just being able to play with a group of really cool people who just want to chill, hang out, and just throw some math rocks around. Um, I had been looking for a play group for a really long time, and I just never really found a group that clicked for me because, again, of some bad apples that were in my games. Whether that was, well, I never really had any bad apple GMs, but I had a lot of bad apple players. Like both as a player and when I tried being a dungeon master for the first time. And I was looking for a table, uh, physical or virtual, since graduating high school. And that took me like doing, yeah, it took me 3 years to find V, who introduced me to you guys, and then I just kind of got roped in, and I just stuck with it.
You got roped in, buddy.
I
Sorry,
Do
my
got
you
computer
regret?
kind of glitched there. I only heard half of it. Do you regret joining us?
yes,
Ah, fair enough.
but yeah,
Like,
just looking for just looking for some stability. Playing a cool game where you throw math rocks around. Um, he just kind of roped me into this group, and I've stuck with you guys ever since. So,
Well, we're glad you got stuck here. Um, I don't know. I think personally for myself, when it comes to role playing games, I I've always been like a writer. I've always, even in my youth, I've been, making short stories, and I've, ever since, I've been conscious. I've been obsessed with Lord of the Rings. Even still to this day, like I've seen Lord of the Rings probably over 500 times in my lifetime. Um, I've just always been obsessed with fantasy world building and writing and so but growing up Christian, hearing even though I'm 20, I was born 19 years after the Satanic Panic. um I still grew up where I've always heard that Dungeons and Dragons are simple as summoning devils and rah rah rah. And so when uh, I was hanging out with Liam and he taught me, he's like, hey, have you ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons? And I'm like, oh, you like devil worship? And he's like, no, like role playing games. And I'm like, oh, I've role played. Hell yeah. Okay, I can get behind this. And then from there, I've been in love ever since. And especially I've fallen in love with DMing, especially with my love for world building and writing. I think I played in one quick one shot that Liam ran for me, and then I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna run it," and then I ran it ever since. Correct me if I'm wrong, Liam, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went.
Yeah, just about.
Seems right.
I love being a DM. It's so much fun. And just to circle back because I feel like I forgot to answer the inspiration. When it came to creating the Boundless Shores, I always knew that I wanted to run another campaign after the one that I had in person. The first iteration of this campaign. But I wanted to play around with a bunch of different genres as well. Like after that game, like I really wanted to run. I still do. In fact, I really wanted to run a sci-fi campaign, something like that. And so I was asking my players on what they wanted to run, and strangely, the one campaign that they all voted for was like a pirate campaign. And so I knew I wanted to have a lot of open seas in my world, and give them access to a pirate ship and all that. But then I always felt like after, because the first campaign kind of just fizzled to non-existence, like I got major burnout, and then I couldn't write anymore, and then we just kind of called off the campaign from there, and so that campaign, that world just always felt unfinished. So I took the original world that I had from that, and I expanded on it, and that's where I got the Boundless Shores from. And then, like, I sprinkled in the pirate. Like, I really wanted to have a lot of open seas, and like I wanted them to be able to travel by sea instead of having one large continent. I wanted like a few different continents. And that's where I got to really have fun with researching how different nations operate, so I could have a lot of different diversity in the political landscape of the world, where I got like an empire, two kingdoms, and a republic. So
Speaking of nations, Owen, Wes, and Nate, those were the only 3 emails I could remember at the moment. I have just sent you the rules for the Avatar TTRPG.
oh shit,
Okay.
Tasty.
hell yeah. Um, does anyone else have a question that they want to lead in with?
Though,
Nate does.
do you? This is a question for the.
For me,
Yeah. Do you have any regrets or things you wish you could have changed or done differently with this campaign?
that's a great question. I have a jokey answer and probably a real answer. My first jokey answer is fucking rivers. I wish I developed more like water masses throughout some of my world. Because, looking at my map, that seems like the one thing that's kind of lacking from it. I know that seems so minuscule, but when it came to developing the world, the rivers were really fucking difficult. I'm not gonna lie.
I can agree with that when it
There's
comes.
some.
Oh,
Go
look,
on.
some continental subduction. Suddenly there's a spring opened up. Oh, and now it's joined with other springs. We've got a spontaneous river. Yay!
But I have to agree when it comes to like trying to build rivers on maps. Like every time I've tried creating a map and added a river, it feels like it's like it's either too much of a river or too little of a river, and there's never that like good in between.
Yeah, because rivers develop this so randomly. Like, there's no logical reason for me to put rivers places, except for rivers flow from high ground to low ground. But their generation really only matters based on the environment around them, whether there's large clusters of rocks or a swamp or like plains. Like it's developing rivers is so random. I hate rivers. Wait, can I activate?
I hate rivers. All my homies hate rivers.
Uh,
I hate rivers.
I have to say though, in terms of like the setting of the campaign and like with the history of it all, it makes sense that there's not a lot of rivers, considering it is not even 1,000 years of land that's been reformed thanks to the tier.
It's basically an
Yeah,
archipelago.
true.
Yeah.
Basically.
Um, and the other things that I really regret from it, maybe
Letting me play druid.
some of the more jokey names.
Blackmore?
Or even like Black Mirror and Blackwater. Like, I wish I had the foresight to kind of realize that there would be a lot of confusion when it comes to that.
Well, it's no different than the real
Um,
world. You got London, Ontario, and then London, UK.
yeah. So I don't know. And as far as story goes, maybe one regret that I didn't start developing a lot of Hatch Coast stuff earlier, because now it seems almost futile at that point to care about that stuff. With everything else going on in the world.
Yeah, I
Um,
suppose that it makes a certain degree of sense that the geopolitical nuance of a trade company is going to fall second to maybe an earth-shattering, multi-world colliding environment.
yeah, but other than that, no, I think everything has really fallen into place where I wanted it to, as far as developing this world goes. That there's not a lot that I wish I changed. Maybe one thing would be, it's not something that I wish I would change, but something I'm going to carry into the next world that I build. Is I want to develop a lot more of the culture a little bit more, just to breathe some life into some of the places where I feel don't have a lot of life breathed into. Um, yeah, no, that's a really great question, but I don't have a lot of regrets when it comes to this campaign. Like, everything has kind of fallen into line as best as I think it could have fallen into line.
No, the one regret you have is allowing Alter Fortune to be in your world.
Oh, you have to go ahead and just open that wound back up.
You know, it's funny. I am not a DM who's afraid to fudge rules when I feel like rules need to be fudged. But when a player does something that I don't expect them to, I'm not going to punish them for it. I could have easily said, "Oh, that's not a natural one. That's a 16, so I pass." To make the combat more one-sided in my favor. Like, I'm not gonna punish you for using your character to the best of their abilities. In that way, I just managed to pass with the roll, and then alter fortunate, and I rolled a natural one. I could have easily said, "Oh no, it's a 16. I pass." But I didn't want to punish you for using your abilities, and I think Alter Fortune is bullshit as it is. I think it's a cool ability, and I think it makes for really great like pop off moments.
And how very horrifying it shall be when he ultimately uses it against us.
I'm a 5e DM. Silvery Barbs is much worse than Alter Fortune.
Anything a player can do, a DM is open to as well. That's my philosophy.
Do you because Silvery Barbs doesn't apply to just d20 rolls. It applies to any dice roll, which is fucking
Um,
bullshit, and I hate it.
Sorry, where was I?
Regrets.
Regrets on we were talking about the
Nice
alter.
fudging, Alter Fortune.
Oh yeah, fudging Alter Fortune. No, and I thought that was a really great moment of like celebration between the players. Like, I think most of us heroes have watched Critical Role, and it's so amazing to watch them, roll a natural, like a lucky natural 20, and the whole table going, "Wah!" Like, that's a great moment, and I don't want to ruin that for you guys, especially because that was a really great moment of like it was almost like a do or die moment where this combat's gonna be either really easy for you guys, or you outsmarted me, or the combat goes to how the combat how I designed it. And so like I'm not gonna punish you for that. And I thought, in that moment, I thought you guys needed the reason to cheer. To go, yes! Natural one! Let's go! Yeah.
I remember later on we were looking over the map that you'd created, and I casually mentioned to you, "This map is horrifying. Any given bull rush attempt, we go for a llama dip."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and that was supposed to be a super, super challenging encounter that you guys just reduced to easy.
We just refused to take part of it.
It
Oh,
although
and
it's
so I'm
like
not gonna punish you guys for that.
even though it's like it seemed like it was easy, we still had to there was still a bit of a challenge of trying not to like interact with the red spawn. Like that was still the challenge.
I took
It
80% of my health in damage in one fucking turn.
it turned the mission from a slogfest to an espionage mission with precision accuracy. If we messed up and one of the characters stumbled into one of the dragon characters that stumbled into us, that would have counted as touching, and we could have ended up having all of our invisibility taken out in one go.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was an active menace, but I mean, we altered the overall battlefield. We still had the same objectives. It's just that we changed the conditions for them.
Oh, that's awesome. I think really quickly we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll meet back in a little bit to continue talking about D&D.
such a good idea. It was just like, that's so easy for me. Just my normal clothes.
Welcome back. Does anyone have any, I don't know, the Boundless Shores centric questions that we want to ask for players or for DM or just, any other questions to open up the floor today? Right now,
Yeah,
is
sure.
what?
I can throw one out to everyone, and in the DM's case, pick a character at random. Your characters are all reverse isekai, so
Ooh.
they're being taken from the Boundless Shores. They are now in our reality. What do they end up doing?
Oh, so just tell them to stay from that point. Yes. That's just.
That's an interesting question. I feel like Ionatan would definitely be like a park ranger. Just putting out fires, making sure that his park is all good, wildlife are doing all right, that sort of stuff.
So you're
I-
basically pulling an Android 17 from Dragon Ball Z Super.
Yes,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
except like less robot, I guess.
Eh,
Honestly, I think Kaldun would already have a skill in our world because of his ability to make Asherati sculptures. So he would just make sculptures for a living.
Yeah, he'd just be an artist. Yeah.
I think our Golan might just be a martial arts instructor.
That or like maybe a UFC fighter.
Alistair is in jail.
Yeah, Alistair is just a Geneva Convention lateness.
I will take a minute to explain this one. He would initially find the prospect of AI fascinating, and he would research into it, and then he would rapidly get bored, realizing, oh, no, I can already do this, and could proceed to build a couple dozen automatons. However, after that, after he's demonstrated that he doesn't think all that much of AI, he would probably go on to researching chemistry, and that would very quickly put him on far too many watch lists. I expect that it would not take very much effort whatsoever to imagine that at one point or another he decides to go ahead and pursue trying to get some very exotic nitrates, ultimately ending up in him being caught in a sting operation and being just absolutely jailed.
I also got two options for knees. He'd either open up a bookshop because he helped run the magic shop a little bit, or B, find a way to be an informant.
I think Knees would definitely just join the FBI.
Knees definitely has narc energy.
He's got a million
True.
faces.
That is true. He does.
I think
Knees, the man of 1,000
A would just genuinely, take the occupation as he did in his former youth, and I think he'd just be an assassin for hire on the dark web.
Yeah, I can totally see Kay doing that.
And then having some kind of small drug ring on the side that he's the kingpin for, so then he could just have unlimited drugs.
Well,
What, like catnip? He's running catnip.
we have safe supply drugs already,
Absolutely.
don't you know?
All right, that was a
Yeah,
fun
free
question.
drugs.
Anyone else have a good question going?
Yeah. In your guys' opinions about your own characters, how do you think they themselves fit into the story of the Boundless Shores?
Could you elaborate on that question a little bit more? What do you mean by how do they themselves like fit? I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
How, to be more specific, like how do they see themselves in positions, like where do they see themselves as sort of like pecking order in terms of figures in the mortal realm, not counting gods or heralds or anything like
Alistair is probably the most straightforward of all. He's a merchant. He's getting thrown into all this stuff that really he's just trying to run away from his past, and at the same time carrying on finding that, okay, well, everyone else is getting involved inside of this. I have a fair bit enough to lose to make it worthwhile to stay with these people, but really, when he needs to consider himself, he's he's a man with very little overall grandiose belief inside of his own role inside of this affair. When everything is said and done, he's probably going to go ahead and carry on down his along the way down the trail with uh, uh, with Zinnia and with Lavender and find yet another venue to go ahead and pop up. If he's particularly wealthy by the time everything is said and done, he might very well decide to strike out on his own with crafting a few more errant magic items and retiring to an island paradise of his own design.
Calduin is the protector of his culture and guide to the younger generation. He wants to broaden their minds and rebuild what was lost from his tribe and his race. He wants to see the statues rise again.
Owen, what about you?
I think our going fits into to the Boundless Shores for the interdimensional aspect of like the Boundless Shores and
I think the fact that we didn't have those songs. I think we should have did one. We should have done one song.
yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of like an interdimensional just briefly, Owen, to ask you to expand on that, like the interdimensional um like
Ambassador.
every other character in this campaign seems to be they're as much as they have connections to other beings and other realms, that they are connected to the Boundless Shores as a realm in some way. Your character really comes in as like almost like an extra planar um alien to the mix with your own different customs, with your own different environments.
I fucking erasing like no, you gotta do the lower like he black than the original. Like because it's not fair to everyone else. And
So I have my next couple of questions are kind of like a series of questions. How does D&D immerse you? Like kind of in a way, are you a visual player where you imagine it in your mind, or you follow the story kind of like reading a book? Where it's you just see the words and you feel how the story would go instead of watching the story as a visual one in your mind.
I'm I'm definitely more of a visual person. Um, it depends on like how the scene is described and everything else. But if like I'm getting really into the story, I'm no longer sitting at my computer desk. I'm standing there as Calduin or as Knees, seeing this play out in front of me.
I
So can
generally,
you?
I would say
Sorry, yeah,
that
you go on.
I generally perceive it kind of like how I would a stage play. How, yeah, sure, on any given set, I can go ahead and I can see a kind of backdrop and the actors walk in and out, and when we need to transition from one scene to the other, that's basically just a quick set change. But overall, do I necessarily picture it as like a fully fleshed out environment where like the fourth wall is fully intact and so forth? Not usually. There are occasions where I'll get lost inside of a scene, and I will generally try to perceive it.
Has there been a scene in the Boundless Shores where you've been lost in, where you really do feel immersed like that?
I have enjoyed the kind of quieter downtime moments over at the Vampire Hill Manor, the way that it kind of gets laid out, and how it becomes a much more low stakes affair, but it becomes a much more lore centric environment that kind of makes it a bit more of a closed kind of cottage kind of experience, even though, of course, the Vampire Hill Manor is going to be a more expansive ground than what it actually is for its set. It kind of just has that feeling of the way that the characters move fluidly from one room to the next. It kind of feels all contained together the same.
So, in the case of maybe saying, you and the poison together, in your role playing moment, that you feel that more of like was like a stage performance, where rather
Uh,
than more of like like a fluid interaction, I guess would be my question.
I do enjoy the interaction that I have with Ego. Don't get me wrong. It's one of those moments of, okay, this is an example of two glorious, methodical thinking characters that are trying to out Xanatos each other. They're both absolute bastards in the moment, but they still have that kind of underlaying, okay, we're both here, we both need something. Now, how do each of us try to get out on top? For as far as the kind of environmental experience, I really enjoyed that whole setup where you expressed that it all, the entire, like, palisade area was cupped inside of the hand of the father when we panned out, kind of thing. That was really fun visual experience, I will definitely say. But overall, when we wander into into the Poison's Temple, it's oftentimes one of those things where I'm being much more focused on making sure that my dialogue is set just so in such a way that I'm not going to regret the words that I use around the poison that makes me necessarily pull out of necessarily the scene itself.
Um, how about everyone else? I think, or everyone or anyone else. How does D&D immerse you?
Uh,
Oh, and I would like to hear your insight. How does D&D immerse you?
I I feel that like D&D, uh, I kind of picture it as like a movie that is still in the making. Uh, and then I also feel like that also mixed with like a kind of like a video game. Like I kind of feel like at times I'm in like first person mode and like as I'm if I'm playing like Skyrim or Fallout or something. And then other times I feel like I'm just watching a movie of like when like Chris and James go back and forth and just have hour-long conversations just back and forth with each other.
Oh, it's very fair.
Yeah, man. So, I find I'm a bit both of like a visual and um like audio or like what I hear and what I picture in my mind. Again, I kind of like to think of it as like an interactive movie, for lack of better words, where there's a lot things that I don't have control over, but I can also influence the story as a single character and the decisions that they make. Um, and one moment that I was deeply immersed in just that theater of the mind was when Ionatan and the rest of the party were crossing the bridge and encountered the merfolk. Like I can visualize in my mind's eye like what was going on in that moment, and it fucking scared the shit out of me because I thought I had fucked us over with all the fucking merfolk just piling on top of each other trying to get at us.
So one half movie, one half choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and then like the descriptions, the verbal descriptions that Wes provides also help to give me more of
So
a
how? I mean, in like you're speaking in a lot of broader senses. How how does it feel when you're trying to role play and play D&D when it's centric around your own character, where your character is almost in a state beyond your own, of course. Like, your character's in distress, but you're not in distress trying to play your character in distress. What's your
Yeah.
mindset when it comes to playing Ionatan in times of hardship, especially throughout all of the different hardships that Ionatan has experienced?
Yeah, I try to, playing Ionatan in times of distress and discomfort. I can almost physically feel the emotions that if Jonathan is feeling distressed or upset, angry, like I try to like feel those emotions myself just to get more in depth into the character and play it as genuinely as possible.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of picture it as if it's happening to me myself and how and just, whatever comes out, whatever happens. Like try to think logically, but also like with the emotion that the character would have.
Does anyone have any other insight when it comes to these questions, or should we move on to the next one?
Let's move on.
Let's
Let's
move
move
on.
on.
So, let's say in the subject of combat during play, are you a role player or a strategist, where you play where you're like, do you view a combat as a role player, where it's your character and you just kind of embody your character and try to think how they would think? Or do you think more in the sense of, this is a game and I'm going to try and beat the game, if that makes sense?
As much as I try to be a role player during combat, with the amount of different strategy games I've played over the years, my brain just goes too analytical, trying to come up with several different moves that could happen within a turn for when my turn comes up.
Yeah. I'm definitely more of a role player than a strategist. I just try to visualize and think of these situations and how my character would feel, think, and act. Um, again, just trying to role play my character the best of my ability with how I think they would act in any given situation, and not necessarily thinking up of a strategy to beat the game. Like if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. If it's a standstill, it's a standstill. Like I just want to role play. I just want to role play what my character would do in any given situation.
Well, like I'm more of a attack first, ask questions later kind of player, uh, like combat one.
It's fucking
Yeah, I say that sums up.
That sums up our goal in 100%.
I try to take it as a fair balance of both. Like, yes, I can approach this situation and probably resolve it with incredible amounts of lethal force, and no one will bat an eye. But that's not Alistair's MO. He holds life inside of a fairly high value. To that end, that's why he oftentimes tries to put a buffer between himself and being necessarily person directly responsible for any given death. If that means that, for example, popping out the wall of stone in order to form prisons for all of the initial scout squad that we encountered when we landed over at whatever the recreational island place was. Uh, or if that means
Farhaven.
Farhaven, yes. Or trying to tactically move about inside of the dwarven forge in order to go ahead and reclaim the Fabergé, trying not to necessarily be responsible for causing any undue death as he goes. These are very important to Alistair. And so, yes, I do need to think strategically of how he would necessarily react. How would he do the most good and cause the least number of things that he would actively be opposed to? And even with the Farhaven Isles, I can assure you that he probably has more than a few issues with abandoning those poor souls inside of the prisons of Wall of Stone that he established, because, yeah, he just basically laid out all of those guys as, like, little appetizers for each and every shadow inside of that city.
Yeah. I think, a great final question, just to enter down, just who do you think is the most overpowered character in the party?
Peter.
The plot armor's too strong on Peter?
No, that's my joke answer. It's my real answer is Alistair.
I was also gonna say Alice.
I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement.
We
I don't know.
are all in
Not
agreement.
even,
It is
not
Alistair.
even Tobin, who's kind of snuck his way into creating kind of a nasty build.
No, my toys are too strong.
You know what? That's fair. Well,
Tobin is a
I
prude.
think it's a great place for us to call it a night.
Tobin
Thank
is
you
the
for joining
surgical.
us for this paradise. I'm gonna roll paradise. See how many drinks I take out of my drink. 7. And you should all take 7 days to think about how much you love D&D.
Hell yeah, dude.
I don't know. 7
And
whole
what we're
days
doing-
to think about how much you love D&D.
Tobin is the scalpel, surgical and precise. I am the mallet.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It has been fun. I believe next week, because I procrastinate, we will be doing a 5e Minds of Mendelver episode. I will not be there. but I'm sure if I talk to Shalin, he will be there next episode for your to join and take my my stead.
Okay. You can just like if he wants to make a new character or what have you, just let him know that he can message me with anything at any time just to make sure.
I will let him know. But for now, big peace. Thank you for joining us. And in hopefully 2 weeks' time, we'll be doing the most insane combat that I've ever run in my history of DMing.
But time.
Peace.
I'm scared.